going to invite my colleagues to join me in a couple of minutes so that we can start the show. The topic for tonight is, as you know, the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And the topic of the show is, who are we? So we'd love you to join with any questions or comments. The number to contact us is in UK 079 444 31366. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. I'm just waiting for my colleagues to join me. Hopefully they will be online very soon. Looks like we can't get them at the moment, so I'm just going to carry on. I would like to tell you first of all what is the Grail message, and then we'll continue from there. What is the Grail message? What is the Grail message? The Grail message in the light of truth by Abdushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover, through the intuitive perception, if what is stated is the truth. Combining with the matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I would like to add one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. Dear listeners, I'm going to try and get my colleagues back online. Hopefully they will be there now. We just see that if they're there.
Hello?
Oh, hello, Brother Gregory. Greetings. How are you?
I'm all right, and you?
Welcome to the show. I know you just missed the beginning of it, but I was doing my usual introduction. So
Okay.
let me tell you how the weather here is in London. It's dark right now, but it's been, I will say, pretty cool, sort of cool today. Mild. Mild is I think the best way to explain it. And as you know, the temperatures are above normal, so it's not really feeling like winter at all. How's it where you are, and where are you?
No different from what you have in London.
Okay, and you're in Brussels today?
Of course, in
Of
Brussels.
course. Okay, welcome. I think Brother Rainer is not with us tonight, so we will start the show. As I've mentioned to you, listeners, the topic for tonight is who are we? And it's you could say, a very fundamental question, because how can you, if we don't know who we are, there's not much we can achieve in our life. So, Brother Gregory, if I can start with the first question about that.
I'm sorry, I thought we were going to have an original reading before that. Has that been done?
No, I haven't actually prepared anything, unless you have something ready, because I haven't prepared something for that.
Okay, no, let's go ahead then.
Yes. So my question would be, as human beings, we consider ourselves to be the most advanced beings on this earth, and people think, oh, we have evolved from the animals and so on. So would you say, Brother Gregory, that we are like an advanced, animal, the most advanced animal on this earth?
Well, thanks for that particular question. The first thing one needs to understand is to have a perspective, an external perspective. That means what you see physically, and then an internal perspective, or in quotes, what one may refer to as a spiritual perspective. Observing man from the outside, one will see that if you start from the stones, you have the stones and at a particular spot, and it's not moved unless it is pushed. From the stones, you can go to the plants. The plants, as one can see, are also fixed to a spot and therefore cannot move unless they are pushed. Now, one can also see that the plants grow and that the stones or the elements came first before we have the plants, and from the plants we now have the animals, and from the animals we now have the human spirit. This is what we observe from the outside, from an external perspective. When you observe these things, the question you keep asking yourself, how did it all go? Who is the man? Is it what you see externally, or is there something more that activates this instrument you see externally? These are the questions each personality should ask. And just as one cannot say that the plant is an advanced form of the elements or of the stone, we cannot also say that the animals we know are advanced form of the plant. Neither can we say that the man, as we know it, looking at man externally, is an advanced form of the animal. One thing is certain, that what we see externally is a gradual development starting from the elements to the plants to the animal. So the physical form that is seen took that route and evolution. That means the coming together of the different species. By coming together, one is referring to the union and the alliances of the different species. That is what we see that form the physical body. So this is what makes many people think that man is, descended from the animal, because they're only considering the external perspective. Whereas what activates the animal or what activates man, these are quite different. As we now know very well, energy is spirit, and energy activates. Energy can be transformed from one form to another. Since energy activates, one may well say that it is that same energy which activates the different forms of energy that activates the external form which we see. How this is done, all these can be examined from the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail Message.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. So I want to follow on from what you said there. You said there's an external sort of aspect of this, um, question of who are we, and then there's you could say an internal aspect as well. And so you've talked about the external there, in terms of the body. You can say the change of the body in evolution, and then there's an internal state, or let's say internal person that is inside the body. So that one, you said, is basically energy and being transformed. So does that mean an animal energy has transformed into human, in our case, also as part of the evolution?
Here is that there is a complete ignorance of what evolution is all about. Evolution, most of the time, is seen from an external perspective. But evolution itself is quite simple. Like we mentioned, the union and alliances of different species in time. That is what, strictly speaking, evolution is. In the union and the alliances, there are all sorts of transformation. One mentioned that when one is talking from looking at the internal perspective, one is referring to that of spirit. What one has not done is to classify the different perspectives of spirit. Though one had mentioned that spirit is energy, because energy activates, that is only a very simplistic view. Of course, one may say that spirit itself has some form of intelligence or wisdom. As one can observe very clearly, the intelligence of, say, the human being is much more than the intelligence of the animals. So one should not expect that in so-called evolution that we have intelligence of the animal has now evolved to the intelligence of the human being. That does not have happened. For evolution has its own limits. So when evolution is discussed most of the time, it has to be kept within the limits to which things can go. Therefore, when you look at it from an internal point, one may say that the human spirit, or the inner man, which makes use of the physical body, only came at a point where the radiations that are given off from the animal body coincide with the radiation that the human spirit emits. Only at that point is the human spirit able to take over the physical body. And in taking over the physical body, is able now to refine it. That refinement is itself a form of evolution, because you have two different species coming together and improving on what already exists. Actually, evolution tells us how things have moved in time. It's not an arbitrary combination. There is a clear definition, there is a clear direction that evolution takes. It is not arbitrary. Although when not examined properly, it may seem that anything can happen. That has never been the case, and that will never be the case.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. I want to look at another aspect. In the Bible, it is said that man is made in God's image, and the story also of man coming on this earth is like the story is given like over 7 days. First, it was the waters and the earth, and then the animals, and then man came on. I'm not remembering exactly this exact story on what happened on each day, but does that story in the Bible correspond with this explanation of evolution? Because many people think God created man. It contradicts. It's like it doesn't stand at all with evolution at all. There's a contradiction if you say man was evolved from somewhere, and when you say God created God created man. So could you help us to understand that is the story in the Bible about man being created contradicting the story of evolution or the understanding through evolution?
Well, in the first case, the word evolution is not understood at all. So not to talk about the creation of man, which is also not understood. So adding both of them together, you have tons of confusion. Adding both of them together, then we have a lot of confusion. When it is said in biblical terms that the Lord created man after, it's not just the word creation and the word image. Again, the conception of image seems very simplistic. An image only comes after a transformation. What many think is they look at the mirror and they see a reflection and they call that one an image. But what they never take into consideration is that the image and the person are not one and the same. For the image is not alive, whereas the person is alive. So one has to carefully understand the context that these things are used. So when it is mentioned that there was creation, now one should also understand creation from what? Something must have existed that must have been used. So some substances or some elements must have been used for creation. And that creation is more like a transformation. So when one considers that there was initial substances, which substances are basically the radiations that stream out of the source of our power. And then when one considers there's a transformation of these radiations, then one will have a slight concept of what an image is like. And like one mentioned, the image and the person, in the case of a mirror, are not one and the same thing. The person is alive, whereas the image is more of a picture, a very simplistic picture. So, on the one hand, one should consider that. When it is mentioned in biblical terms of creation, as is mentioned, as we all know, these are over spiritual times, which span very, very long times, maybe millions or billions of years. It didn't just all of a sudden just happen. However, a better picture can be understood when one examines the work in the light of truth. So the 7 days which were mentioned, these were just little pictures given at a particular stage of development so that man will come to a better conception. It doesn't mean it is 7 earthly days. That never happened. For 1,000 years are as one day. Many a man knows that there is the spiritual realm. And it is said in the spiritual realm, 1,000 years are as one day. So, all this must be brought into it in order to understand correctly the concept that has been put forward in biblical terms.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrusheen. And the topic for discussion tonight is who are we? I gave you a phone number earlier, and I've discovered that that phone number is not actually available to me at this moment. So I'm going to give you an alternative number for this show tonight. Apologies for that. I thought it was available, but it's not. So I'm going to give you an alternative number to contact us for the radio show tonight. The number it's a UK number. It's 079 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00 79 444 313 66. And again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Brother Gregory, I'm going to carry on with our questions. We've talked about the spirit. We know about the body, and then let's talk about the mind, because as human beings we have a personality, and we've talked about, obviously we're all aware of our body, and I think most people are clear that the body is not actually us. Being a spiritual program, we know it's not the body that lives. So let's say we know it is the spirit that actually lives. But what about our personality? Is that within the spirit, or is it in our mind, that when we are on this earth, when I say mind, something that emanates from our brain in this body, or is it in the spirit?
Well, you mentioned the personality. The person itself is the spirit. However, the spirit needs to experience in its activities. In doing that, it has to come to a realm like the earthly or the world of matter, where it needs to participate in activities. To do that, it needs to take on a physical body. At the time the spirit is outside of the physical body, at that state, it is referred to as the soul. When the body now takes over the physical body, That means it incarnates in the womb of a pregnant woman and then finally takes over the physical body. Then we have a state which moves further and we have a physical birth. At that state, the spirit or the soul tries to understand how to make use of the physical body until it is matured enough. It has full control of the physical body. At the same time, the brains through which it uses to get to the physical body have to be developed in such a state that there should be good coordination. That being the case, we now have the back brain and the frontal brain. The back brain is the seat through which activities of the spirit will pass. And those activities of the spirit one may refer to as one's intuition, the intuitive perception. On the other hand, we have the frontal brain, which is the seat of one's thoughts, of one's where those impressions that have come from the spirit are transformed such that it can make itself understood in an earthly fashion. That is the seat of the intellect. Most of the time, the intellect is tied to the mind, or sometimes to the mind is tied to the intellect, and sometimes to the back brain. So this is what you have. On the one hand, the back brain that harbors the impression coming from the human spirit, which is the person in reality, makes itself known. And once these impressions are transformed to the frontal brain, then we have things like movements, speech, thoughts, and all sorts of things. On the other hand, impressions from outside are then transferred to the frontal brain before they are reworked and pushed back to the back brain and then finally back to the human spirit. So most of the time, there is halfway between a mixture. When one talks about mind, it sometimes means the human intellect, or which has its seat in the frontal brain, in combination with the back brain, which is the seat of one's intuition. So that is what is referred to most of the time as the mind.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. Just want to explore that a bit more. So, if you look at this personality, when it comes on this earth, you said we need the body to experience. For the spirit to experience, it needs a body. Of course, we're talking on the earth here at the moment. So, when it comes to this earth, does the spirit already have a personality, or is it developing on the earth?
Before the spirit arrives here on the earth, it must have been undergoing some form of experiencing through its activities. And therefore, it has its own unique personality, but which must be developed. And that is why we have the need to come here on the earth for further development. It is not true that it has just come, it has no personality. No. When it's set off from its origin, it's set out as an unconscious germ. And as it moved away from its origin, which is the paradise of man, it gets to a certain stage where it keeps taking on different clothes to experience. By the time it gets to Earth, it has acquired some experiences and it now awakens here on Earth for further experiences. And it may come here several times. There are many other areas of experiencing, not only the Earth, not only in the world of matter. There are other realms through which the spirits may experience. And it is these experiences that strengthen the human spirit. When it started as an unconscious spirit gem. By the time it has experienced and has developed in the right way, it is supposed to go back as a self-conscious human spirit or as a human being.
So now, what about the parents? Because people think when a child is born, oh, he looks like the dad or the mom, or he's taken some features of the personality of the dad or the mom. Once they start, let's say, acting. Of course, they can't speak at the beginning. A baby can't speak when he's born. So at least when not speak like an adult, obviously, they just make noises. But then they do behave in ways, and then people think, oh, this is something from the from one side, the father's side or the mother's side. So doesn't the child who is born, the baby, doesn't it not inherit any personality from the parents? Because what you're saying up to now, it sounds like it has already got some personality before it arrives on the earth.
What happens in the case are mere resemblance, are only as a law of homogeneity for people that have similar traits. Similar traits in the sense that you wish to experience through these parents for some time. And therefore, you come into the family and you observe, even before one is born, the personality is already there, observing the parents and studying how it is going to adjust itself to the parents only for some time. Any inheritance is only, in all naturalness, of the physical body, because it is the physical body that has been passed from the parents, or the preparation of the physical body has been passed from the parents to the child. But the inner man only approached as a result of the attraction of similar species. Like they will say, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. These sayings have a very cogent reason. So people are brought together because they wish to experience along the same direction in order to mature.
Then what about sometimes they call it the black sheep of the family, where a child is not like its parents, doesn't act like the parents are, and how did that happen? Is it because you said the child sort of tries to absorb and learn from the parents, how to act with the parents. So sometimes you get this type of personality where, let's say, the parents are teach it a lot of good things, but somehow the child seems to turn out to be, as we say, black sheep, something, bit of an outlaw. So how can that be explained?
Most of the time, human observation is very limited. It is possible that we do have, as a result of some guilt, you have a particular human spirit incarnating in a family that may not have anything in common as such. At the same time, it could be within the family, there could be friends that visit that house, or there could be other people that live around. All these have influenced the incarnation of a personality. For when you look at it, all right, the father, the mother, the brothers, and all others, and some other influences around influence the incarnation. And therefore, you sometimes have the parents may be very good, as seen by human spirit. However, in their laxity, they would have given room for a sheep or for someone to incarnate that doesn't mean very well for that particular family. So there are so many possibilities that need to be considered, but most of these have to do either with a reciprocal activity, which was so long time ago, or due to the attraction of homogeneity of the people that hover around the parents.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. Another point, we're talking about personality, developing human beings. I know we've mentioned before in the show, there's something called reincarnation, you know, where we human beings reincarnate. So, what I want to ask there, Brother Gregory, what is reincarnating? Is it the soul, the spirit? Uh, uh, and yeah.
Well, it was mentioned in the earlier discussions we had that we have a personality coming again to experience here on earth, but needs to take on the physical body. For one who had been here before, one may refer to as reincarnation. For one who has not been here before on the earth, one that has not been born to the earth before, one may talk of an incarnation. So reincarnation is for the human spirit or the human soul. By soul, one means the human spirit with different cloaks, because it wears different clothes to make itself understood. So when it comes back, is now able to take on the final cloak, which is that of the physical body. Then, because it has come before and is coming again, we say there's reincarnation.
And is it reincarnation to redeem the sins of the previous life, uh, or or just to continue to develop further? Uh, what is the point of the reincarnation?
Basically, the point of reincarnation is for further development. Whether that further development means to redeem what it has done which was not right, that is development, or that is further development. That is, now it has seen what it has experienced, or it needs to experience what it has sown in the past here in the flesh. So that is a grace which is granted, and that is in development. It is not a punishment, as many would like to say it.
And is it meant to happen that we continuously reincarnating as continuous development, uh, um, or is there a time limit?
The time granted for development of the human spirit is immense. But as with everything, the world of matter, or in other realms, the world of matter comes into being. And after some time, which may take millions or billions and billions of years, we then have the world of matter, which has cooled down from the energy state to hard matter as we know it, needs to go back to its initial state. And a human spirit or a human soul that has incarnated in order to experience must ensure that within that time limit, which is granted through the grace here in the world of matter, that human spirit needs to ensure it has acquired enough maturity in accordance with the will of its maker, such that it may go back home to paradise as a self-conscious human spirit, or as a self-conscious human being. Now, one can now see that it cannot go on forever. If within the time granted, within the world of matter, the human spirit does not develop itself to be mature enough, then it faces the prospect that the maturity it has acquired is not in accordance with what the light expects of it. And therefore, such a maturity or immaturity will be crushed because it will be held tight to the world of matter that has to go back to its primeval state. So it is not forever, although it takes a very long time, but it doesn't go on forever. Those who are matured enough, who have sort of allowed themselves to be guided through their intuition and matured in accordance with the will of the Lord Almighty, those ones would have severed themselves from the world of matter and from the ethereal realms back to the animistic realm and then back home. Those are the ones who will then be alive.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. And if you want to get a copy of the Grail message or find out more, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'm going to spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com, grailmessage.com. You can get a copy of the Grail message there, or you can read some more information there. The topic we're discussing tonight on the show is Who Are We? And we'd love you to join us with any question or comments. The number you can call, it is for tonight only, because the regular number is not available at the moment. So the number you can contact us here in the studio in London, in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 7939 641 958. Brother Gregory, I want to ask you another question on what Jesus said. He said Jesus said that the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And we've talked about the spirit, and I guess we also talked about the flesh, meaning, I guess we mean the body by that. But what did Jesus mean when he said the spirit is willing, and but the flesh is weak?
The activities of the spirit act in such a way that is of immense rapidity. However, because of densification, it takes time for these activities to become apparent within the physical body. So you will find that though the spirit has made its decision, or in sleep, one can experience that sometimes in sleep you sense you are born, you spend centuries in one place, I've done this, I've done that, and then when you wake up, what do you find? That dream only took about 5 or 10 minutes, scarcely 10 minutes. So you find that spiritually things are much, much faster. But due to densification, the physical body, things have slowed down. And that is the weakness that is being mentioned. So the spirit has made this decision in its experiencing, but it takes a much longer time for it to become apparent, for it to manifest here in the physical body or here on earth.
So does that mean uh, we can never really, the flesh can never follow what the spirit wants in a complete manner? It is always, because it's weak, the flesh is weak, it's not possible for the spirit to really be fully active on this earth. It's only when we leave the body, this material world, can the spirit be fully, you know, anything let's say demands, or anything it wants, can only achieve it sort of in another world, not on this physical world.
There is a limit to the capabilities of the physical body, and that can be understood very simply because of densification. And therefore, it is not possible for all the activities of the spirit to be manifested here on earth the way the spirit wants it. It is just not possible. The spirit can only make its intentions known through one's intuitive perception. These intentions or these intuitive perceptions still have to be transformed to physical reality by the frontal brain. And in this transformation, there are some consolidations. So there is a limit to which the physical body can go. And therefore, not everything can be realized here on earth using the physical body.
Thank you for that. I want to ask now things more specifically. For example, obviously on the earth we have male and female human beings, and we have, let's say, other things that are happening as well. Can the spirit just choose to be a male or a female, or is there something that happens that it turns into a male or female? And in a way, let's yeah, is it so? For example, on the earth, obviously the parents, if you want to talk biologically, the male has an X and Y chromosome, and the female has two X chromosomes. So one comes from the male parent and one comes from the female parent, and so that's what we see when a child is born. So is there something happening also with the spirit where that makes it a male spirit? I hope I'm not making this too complicated, but I think it'll be good for the listeners to understand that there's things that happen on the spiritual level, and then things happen on the physical level. So let me ask a question then. So does the spirit choose its sex? Let me ask like that.
Yes, the spirit chooses its sex at the beginning when it left paradise, and depending on the area of activity it wishes to indulge in. If it is the sensitive area of activities, then it takes on the female form. If it is the positive area, the coarse area of activity, it takes on the male form. And it is that interpretation of the male activity or the female activity that results in the so-called chromosomes and all the arrangement. These things, they are not arbitrary. What one should do is to seek for that. The chromosomes do not finally determine everything. The chromosomes can be influenced by the human spirit. So when the human spirit needs to incarnate, depending on its decision whether to be engaged in a wholly coerce activity, in that case, it takes on the male form. Otherwise, it takes on the female form.
So, when we were talking earlier about reincarnation, can the spirit change? In one incarnation, it is male, and in let's say a later incarnation, it chooses to be female. Can it change that? Uh, and yeah, can that happen?
Yes, it does happen that a human spirit that has chosen initially and deep within in his identity is female or is male can, through again its activities here on earth, may decide to indulge in other activities which are not in accordance with its initial decision. And that now brings us to the area where we have male or people who look like female in male bodies and people who like male in female bodies. These are all complications that the human spirit has placed on itself, but that was not intended at the beginning. But the human spirit has its free will and may proceed as it wishes. But most of the time, some who have come have changed their activities through experiences they may find it's not helpful, and they go back to the initial decisions they made when they left paradise.
You mentioned that yes, the spirit can choose to be male or female in the incarnations and so on, uh, but it is not intended. So, uh, what is actually intended then? Are we Because people might think that for you to become mature spirit, you need to experience male activity, you need to experience female activity. Then you will be all rounded, and you'll have different experiences. So you'll be like more mature. I mean, that's what somebody might think like that. But from what you have
Well,
been saying, that is not what is intended.
such thinking is purely intellectual. What you have is that within the scheme of things, the structure which have been placed in creation, you have that there are the sensitive ones that are involved with transmission of radiation from one realm to the other, downwards or sometimes upwards. These particular ones are the females. And there are those who are involved in heavy work. These particular ones are the males. That is the structure of creation. For example, you do not expect an electron, and since sciences is what people use, an electron becomes a proton, and a proton becomes an electron, all that type of confusion. All right, creation is well arranged. Creation is well ordered. And what one needs to do is to understand the initial order in accordance with the Creator's will. That is what counts. Not that one today becomes a female intellectually, tomorrow he wants to become a male, then he wants to become a female, and those ones will impact. Such incarnations will impact on the maturity which is intended in according to the Creator's will. And since it will impact on the maturity, it will not be very helpful for one to start as a male, second time is a female, becomes a male again, becomes a female. And such confusion only comes through intellectual activity. For one who is genuinely female transmits the radiations, transmits the radiation that it receives to the male, such that a specific task may be accomplished. For more of this, one will refer everyone to the work in the light of truth, and so that each one may examine it very critically and rigorously to understand what is being discussed here. For we're only just touching on the surface.
Thank you for that. And so, I mean, you've mentioned there the free will of man or human beings, and then there's the Creator's will. How, and then, so you could say that man having free will can obviously choose to go any path that's available to him, and yet there is something expected from the Creator if creation is to operate, let's say, I was going to say in a successful way, but maybe that's not the right word. But uh, for the creation to fulfill its purpose, let me say that way, which the Creator intended for it, and man, as a human beings, have a role to play in that. So, how can we human beings, with the free will, discover what is our role, and because is there something we need to follow, some belief? We've mentioned the grail message here. That's what our program is about, to tell people about the grail message. Is there some belief that we have to follow, or is it discovery? uh, yeah, what is it we are meant to do?
First, one has to discuss about the grail message. The grail message is not a belief, it's not a philosophy. The grail message talks about the natural laws through which all came into existence. That is not itself, it's not a philosophy, but it's simple naturalness. We talked about the word belief. When one examines the human spirit, then it becomes very clear that the human spirit did not invent itself, but the human spirit came into existence through a specific consistency. For when existence is mentioned, one is talking about specific consistency. One cannot separate them. And therefore, one will have to ask, what capabilities has the human spirit got in order to fulfill the role of its existence? Like we now know, the human spirit set out from this paradise of man as an unconscious spirit gem. In doing that, it needs to experience the different realms below it. For at that place where it came into existence, the movement was so fast, being the spiritual realm, that it could not come into, I won't say the word existence, it could not come to realization of its own capabilities. So it needs to journey away like a prodigal son in order to experience, where the movement is slower, so that it will now gradually build up its own capabilities, which capabilities have already been placed as talents within the human spirit. Only when it has fulfilled that, when it has built up its capabilities and now becomes a self-conscious human spirit, only then will it now know what its tasks are supposed to be. For it has received the grace now as a self-conscious human spirit, and whoever has received must pass on what it has received or must be in a position to assist others. So before the human spirit start talking about cooperation, it needs to build up its own capabilities. It needs to come into self-consciousness to know its limits, to know what it's capable of doing and not capable of doing, to know its limits, where it came into existence, to know that it is not life itself, but it's a shadow of life itself.
Now, to move on to something you could say a bit more earthly. Um, on this earth, we have many uh, countries, races, cultures. And we've been talking that every human being is a spirit. And if we know that you are a spirit, what is the point of this, like, different race? Because race, when you talk about spirit, it's like that is, you don't think of it as a particular race. Would I be right to say like that? You just think of it as a human being without any, well, we've said it, it's spirit without a body, basically, on the, like, if a personality, basically, we can just put it that way, a human personality. And yet on the earth, we know that obviously we come from where our parents, we've been born on the earth through our parents, and obviously we inherit the physical characteristics of the body from them, and then obviously part of that is our race and culture. And so, in a way, what I'm asking is that important, the what race you are, what culture you are, and which part of the world you're born, and if it is, what is the relevance of it? Because uh, we've been talking here all the time about spiritual development and experiencing, and in that, when we talk about that, it doesn't seem to have any uh, sensing of anything of a race, or a particular country or culture. So is there something connected? Are these two connected, or yeah?
Well, the first thing is that it is wrong to say that it has not got a personality before it even incarnated on earth. It has a personality, and that personality is that of the spirit. It's becoming more aware or more conscious from the state in which it was to a better state. So it has a personality. Because it has a personality, we now have those of of similar, say, homogeneity. They only come together in order to build up. That is what gives rise to nations. That's what gives rise to families. There must be something homogeneous, all right, within a nation or within a culture. So, and again, the word culture has to be understood in its proper meaning. So when we have people who, in their level of development, you know, automatically are brought together in order to experience from that particular level what it offers. Maybe along the line, having the when all is said and done and it departs, he may not wish to come back and experience that again because he can now make a decision because it has his free will and say, this was not very helpful, or one sank into a level which is not quite helpful. These are decisions left for the human spirit. But the human spirit has to make decisions, has to weave. And therefore, we have that those of similar aspirations, they come together. And in coming together, we now have little villages or societies, or we have like an envelope which ties everyone together in a particular nation because they have similar qualities and the way they do things. So that is the way it is. It is not that there's no need for it. all right, is only as a result of the law of attraction of similar species.
Thank you for that. Now, let me now come to the sort of life in the modern world, where, because we mentioned about the different, you could say, society, or when you said, basically mentioned the law of attraction of homogeneous species, which has brought people in with similar, let's say, wishes to grow and develop together. Now, living on the earth, we have had a lot of migration, let's say in Western Europe over the last 100 years, we could say. Um, and let's give an example. So let's say in Western Europe, the, people have come from Africa and Asia for economic purposes as economic migrants, and then they have settled in this country, let's say UK, and then they had their children growing here, and they come from a different culture, and they're the minority in this, let's say, European culture. Now, would you say, from a spiritual development point of view, that this is a good development, and or it's just, let's say, because of the way the world has developed, with some people dominating other people and taking advantage, and and troubles like that, where things have got messed up and people have just been scattered. So yeah, so is that, let's say, the development that we have in the last, let's say, I said up to 100 years, that has happened, where migration has taken place and different cultures are mixing together? Would you say that's something, a good development, or it's something else?
In the first case, the migrations have always taken place for very long times. All right, in the time of Egypt, even earlier than that, there have been different migrations everywhere. So it's not correct to say over the last 200 years. If one says over the last 6,000, as far as one may remember, or 12,000 years, because migration was still there. And there were no nations, but there were communities, but very few nations at that time. There were communities that came together in order to build up. And there were not as many boundaries as have been put up today. But the key thing about these migrations or non-migrations is that we must look at the individual human spirit, what it has sown in the past, what has brought it back here to the earth to experience, what it has to make good, the sort of experiences it needs for its own personal maturity. There are many that may need to go through this sort of migration in order to understand what it means to go through migration. For the possibility exists that in their past earth lives, they, through their activities, have instigated that others will have to go through migration. That is only one possibility. One must stress that migration is viewed as bad because the person who is migrating from country A to country B has not got, is not bringing enough resources, inputs. For if the person migrating from country A to country B, sorry, migrating from country A to country B, if that person were to bring $100 million, the discussions we're having now wouldn't take place. It will be welcomed. But who is to say that the person migrating from country A to country B has not got its own intrinsic quality that he can use to enhance whatever country it is going to? There must be flexibility in all these things, and there must also be justice in all these matters. But these are matters which have to be considered in each case in order to understand, to ensure there is a just world. For what you find most of the time is that one part of the world wants to consume so much and live the way they like and give the impression that that's the good life, whereas the other part of the world is being exploited. All these things have their repercussions. As people have sown, in due course, they will have to reap. And if this reaping therefore means migration, so be it. So
Yes.
each human spirit must determine how he or she intends to live, all right, and to make itself useful in whatever community, whether it is the migrant community that is involved or not.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. Um, so, reflecting on what you've said there, because obviously everything has to be seen from a spiritual perspective, and which is in terms of our development, rather than just the out external earthly um, circumstances that people see. Um, and because you can see sometimes there's a disharmony between the different communities because they have different thinking attitudes and so on, but what you're saying is really it's about the individual experience is what is more the bigger what the focus should be on, rather than the um, as I said, the physical differences. um, So I'm going to talk on another aspect now. Young people growing up now, and you hear so many stories in the news. Uh, that this is a social internet world now, social network. You know, things stars are doing things, the children are copying that, or anything's available on the internet. What people want or want to get to know about something. So, and the adults or the parents of the children are not even that sort of tech savvy about what the children can get from the internet. They just don't even know what's available out there, and we are seeing so much influence of that, around the world. For example, you can talk about fashion. You can talk about fame. People striving for fame, and then also some, let's say, even more serious sort of detrimental things where children are watching things which are violent, and even some of them, let's say, they don't look good in the eyes of their peers, and they even resort to suicide, uh, just because somehow they feel they're lacking confidence in themselves. So my question to you, Brother Gregory, is: should these children be having mentors? If the parents are not able to provide the right education or sufficiently education to bring up a child in today's world, should there be some mentors? Because I'm thinking about other stories like gangs. Um, uh, you hear about them that they seem to be living in another. Although they live, let's say, in London, it's a totally a separate world out there for them. And the rest of the community seems to be disconnected with that. And what I see in the news is that former gang members who have sort of reformed themselves, they are the ones who come out and provide help and become mentor to these young children. They're the ones who can help. So my question again, Brother Greggy, should in the world of today with these young children, who are so influenced by the internet age, should they be given mentors? Should we find new ways of reaching out to these children so they are brought up prepared for this world?
Question. It is assumed that these so-called young ones um, are not intelligent enough to make their decisions. Of course, they choose, many of them choose to go after what they have seen out there. But before going to the so-called young ones, what about the elders? What about the parents? What sort of examples do they provide to these younger generations? These younger generations only copy what they have found out there. And what they have found out there came from the initial generation. So the reformation should start with the initial generations. It is they that have provided the basis for these young souls to incarnate. So they should first take care of themselves to ensure they understand what the laws of creation and the responsibilities that are placed on their shoulders. But what you will find, that is not the case. And therefore, they go ahead and provide opportunities for many a soul to incarnate. At the same time, they turn around and then blame these souls that have incarnated, whereas it was they themselves that made provision for these souls to incarnate. The idea of mentors are very good. However, let each parent do the best it can and not check its responsibilities. Then you will find that many of the younger generations will also copy that, which is very useful. In some countries, before these terrible things came about, things were such that not a young one will be harmed, because the general concept that the younger ones should be protected. But it was the older ones who broke that barrier, who showed the wrong examples. Go out and see the fashion. It is the elder ones or the elderly ones who do all sorts of things that you won't believe. And then you find the young ones, they copy. Because they will say what is good for the geese is good for the gander. And they just follow without even reflecting. And one should not forget that these young ones, they have only just, matured to a stage where that power, which one may refer to as generative power, is just breaking through. They are being guided very carefully. But at the same time, what do they find? So much rubbish, tons of rubbish they find around themselves. Drugs, smoking, lying, untruthfulness. These are the things that plague these younger generations. And how did it come? It is the older ones that place them there through their thoughts, through their activities. True mentors will help, but let the older generation, through their activities, show how it should be. And very quickly, you will find how things will change.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. Another thing is just trying to form this question. Okay, just to continue with what you've just said about this mental thing. See, one of the reasons I was asking that question was that the parents are not really themselves familiar with this internet and stuff that is happening. The children are more advanced in it, and so they don't even know what the children are up to. This is half the issue. That these things are done in secret from the parents. And as I said, the parents are not even equipped themselves. The children seem to be ahead of the game there. So how can you expect the parents when they're not even prepared themselves to how can they handle the children if they themselves don't have that knowledge?
The question has always been take heed or take the responsibilities or whatever comes after it. If one knows one is not capable of the challenges of being a parent, then why do you provide the opportunity of being a parent? It's a matter of responsibility to go around and say, oh, they have the internet and the internet teaches them. It is not the internet that teaches them anything bad or good. These children make decisions. Sometimes they are not mature enough to make such decisions. And if they do not find any pole within the parents or within their community, then they become lost. But what do they find within their community, in the neighborhood of their community? Rottenness of the highest kind. All right, debauchery of the highest kind. And what you find, all right, the movies which are watched are so terrible. And then you ask yourself, what does the human spirit gain from these murderous things which they are being exposed to? But one shouldn't forget, the children themselves choose. And the free will is always there. A parent who is serious and take their responsibility seriously must do the best they can by engaging with their children to ensure that the children do not select that which becomes poisonous. Would a parent allow a child to go through a forest filled with dangerous snakes and animals, knowing fully well that will be the case, and yet move back because the children have free will? Will a parent allow a child to go through a war zone knowing fully well what could happen there? The parent will do the best he can to make sure that doesn't happen. So the elderly ones should take their responsibilities very seriously. And then they themselves will see, after one generation or the other, how things will change. So it is trying to, check one's responsibility and say, oh, I don't have access to the internet. Of course, many who have access to the internet can choose that which is helpful and choose off from that which is not helpful. So the decision comes back. That is that of a personal choice.
So what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that, in the world today, people keep talking about freedom, and they want to, parents, let's say, they want to give their children the freedom, what they want to do, and things like that. But you're saying this freedom, the parents have to control what they allow and don't allow their child to do, not just let them basically do whatever they think they can do, and then suddenly they get a shock because they didn't realize what the child was up to.
What one is saying is that the parents or the mentors or whatever they call themselves should show good examples always, not sometime. Not showing a good example when children are watching, and behind it they go murdering, saying all sorts of things, and showing bad examples. All these things which are hidden, of course, are only hidden before the human eyes. But in human thoughts, they gather together, and these children are able to perceive this. So it's an open world, because this is a world which is permeated by thought forms, which thought forms affect not only the elderly ones, but also children. So in our thoughts, we should strive to protect children. We shouldn't just allow them to do this. It's not that we have to beat them up or something, but through our activities, we should continually show good example how it should be. We should continually strive to understand the way the world works or the way creation works, and not hold on to one religion and ensure that there's no progress. So this is an open world. It's not a closed world, it's open. And therefore, what may be happening in Japan through thought forms or through the internet can also affect a child in Africa. All right? There are no boundaries when it comes to thought forms, unless the thoughts are different. As long as there's homogeneity, we find the law of attraction of homogeneous species coming into play. And therefore, the younger ones are able to assimilate these thoughts in their heads before we know of it.
Now, there's a news story which has become quite big in the last few days, and I just would like, I'll just say what it is, and then I'll ask your views on it. So there's a story about a young Muslim girl called Shamima Begum, who ran away from, she was a 15-year-old, and she ran away from London. She was a schoolgirl, and to marry an Islamic State fighter in Syria. And now she just had a baby son maybe a couple of days ago. And before that, she had an interview with the reporter because what happened, Islamic State, as we know, is being defeated, or they're losing their battle so much at the moment, and the people have been captured, or the women and children from the areas where they are being you could say, put into camps, refugee camps, and so on. And apparently, this news reporter managed to get an interview with this young woman who was from London, as I said, and now she has a son, and obviously, and she had two previous children who died, unfortunately, in unfortunate circumstances, I'll say. And now she wants to come back to UK, although she had originally decided to go to Syria, and to be in that place. So now she feels she wants to come back and bring her child up here in a better place. And though she admits that when she left, that she did know what she was doing, but she doesn't have complete regret for what she has done. And then, being British, she wants to come back to Britain now because she knows she'll have a better life here. And here in UK, people are giving their views. Like some people saying she should suffer the consequences of a decision she chose to go there, and she shouldn't be allowed back because she should suffer what she did. What decision she made by going there. And others are saying, no, she should be allowed back because then part of the reason is we can learn from her how she got, indoctrinated or groomed, as the people say, and got radicalized, and we can find out about that, how she got that, and then also she can be de-radicalized. And not only that, her son, in quotes, who is supposed to be like an innocent son, could have a good future here rather than suffer where he is there. And so basically, my question to you, Brother Gregory, on that is, what do you think about this situation? What do you think about that?
Though one's views are immaterial when it comes to the affairs of the state, but it should be quite clear that those who took off to join some societies or some things somewhere must have some responsibilities. Although many may say diminished responsibility, but it was very clear that it was her own free will. She found her way to this particular place. And through her activities, many a person have had to perish. These are the things that will have to remain with her for life. And therefore, one should allow her, through her activities, to experience some of the things she herself has put in place. It is sentiment to talk about, she has to come back and her children, the child have a good life and all that. Had the so-called Islamic State gained precedence, of course she would have enjoyed it. But above all, it should be very clear, whatever a person has sown, that is what that person will have to reap. Even if they can't reap it now, before long, here or hereafter, they will have to experience, for they provided the threads in the weaving of their faith. So it all depends on the country and the laws that they have put in place. So one's opinion or one's view is immaterial, but as a human spirit, one will have to speak to their souls directly. Do that which will be of benefit to you, not that which will help to destroy your neighbor. If her volition was to destroy her neighbors, by neighbors, I don't mean someone who lives 2 meters away from you. By neighbors could also mean someone in a different country whom you don't know, but through the laws of attraction of homogeneous species, that person also needs to experience in order to develop its own qualities. If one's view is to destroy one's neighbor, then one furnishes a thread which will come back or which will return to that particular personality. So in her own case, as she has woven, those threads will return.
Thank you for that. And in connection with that, people are making judgments about, her choices and things, and um, they don't really know her, let's say, and I'm using that only as an example because we do that in other things as well. You know, this one is a news story, and only a few people would really know. In fact, the family, when she left, it was a shock for the family as well because they had no clue that that's what she did. It was a surprise for them. They didn't know what she was doing, so it was a shock for them. And even all this time she's been away, they've not really been in touch with her. So uh, my question is then, can we, in this particular, let's say, story, um, you know, look at that person and judge them that, you know, this person is, let's say, evil, or, they're, even some people say, oh, she's groomed and all this sort of thing. So how do we look at this situation in a way? That's what I'm asking, where we uh, do not know everything about the story.
Real judgment comes only through the perspective of the laws of nature or the laws of creation through which every personality came into existence. Most of the time, it is hot talk and sentiment. Like one said, whatever a soul has woven into creation, that is what it has to reap. As and when the reaping comes through, it could be this earth life, it could be another earth life. Or if it doesn't improve itself in good time, it may not even have the opportunity to exist. So, on the long run, one should ask oneself basic questions. What are religions for? What is education for? If religion or education does not assist man in self-improvement, in self-consciousness, then of what use? Each personality has come to improve himself or herself. Should one personality go about destroying another and finding excuses? One should sweep away the sentiment. Like we keep saying, the human judgment is very partial. It doesn't get into the real thing. But what we know, spiritual judgment, that is the real one. That is one that cannot be evaded because we ourselves have given the threads to ensure that things are woven that way. How it's going to turn out, only the laws of creation can predict. As a human spirit, it is difficult to follow how the human spirit will now have to move from one incarnation to the other. Whatever we do, we should look not only on the short term, but also on the long term. And there should be severity on our activities. We, as human spirits, must always ensure we are critical of our activities. We should not always find excuses and say, oh, it's because I belong to this religion, I'm a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, or I belong to the white race or the black race or the red race, and all these do not count, for it is very clear. Whatever the soul has fashioned for itself, that it will have to live through. So if the soul has fashioned wickedness instead of help to others, then in all naturalness, it is he or she, the soul, that has put it there. With this, many a person will now become very careful in the way that they judge things, in the way they view their religion or they view their education. For if religion is unable to help in the improvement or to help in consciousness, or to help in the improvement of the talent which the human spirit harbors, then it is completely useless. So also is education. We must view this and say, of what value is what I now, is what I own, or what I profess to? Of what value is it? Is it to belong to a group and have special privileges? Of what value is my existence, even here on earth? These are questions that can be asked by any person. And only when we know whom we are, similar to the lectures we are discussing now, who are we? Only then can we make progress. Else we have blinkers in our eye and we keep making the same mistakes.
Thank you for that. I've got another question, um, which we again something we do here in the news as well. So, when let's say Muslim terrorist has done a terror attack, killing people, let's say, you see, obviously, let's say the news of that comes out, and then you hear that many people who are Muslims in, let's say, some other area, let's say, they're either verbally or physically attacked as a revenge. These are not people who have done this act, but because they happen to be from the same religion, people attack them as a revenge, and or at least they suspect them to be Muslim, let's say. And then, so do you think it is right the members of that same religion should be labeled terrorists, because that's what is going on in this way, because one of their own carries out an outrageous act like terrorist act, and yeah, and just
well, it's one doesn't even need to discuss this, because the sins of the father has nothing to do with that of the son. Each personality stands on his own, and should learn from that. So, but one should be very careful in the sense that one should not condone that which is wrong. And when it is done by a group from which you have allegiance, one should not hide it and say it is wrong, whether it is Muslim or non-Muslim, Christian or non-Christian, Jew or non-Jew. It's immaterial, and like we stress, whatever the soul has fashioned for itself, that it will reap in abundance. So questions as such as the one you asked mainly shows the human behavior or the limited knowledge which many have, and but many remain silent when they see so much injustice being done in one place or the other.
So, just continuing from that, like I said, those who have been sort of innocently targeted because of somebody else's deed, how should they behave? In this case, we're talking about Muslims. Should they now hide their identity? Like, let's say, women are dressed with the hijab. Muslim, not every Muslim woman does that, obviously, but if some woman now this let's say this atrocious act or terrorist act has taken place, which is claimed by some Muslim, and then and other people out of revenge want to attack another Muslim just because they feel they have to take revenge for some reason, and so the people who let's say becoming the victim, should they now change their behavior, like hide their identity, in this case what I'm saying, and to try and you know it's like you're losing your freedom, and every you can't be who you are anymore. So how should people behave when you have got this sort of behavior going on?
It is not right for one to say this is how you should behave or how not to behave. Each human spirit must be itself. By their activities, we shall know them. If through one's activity you show in your neighborhood that you mean well, whether you are Muslim, non-Muslim, Jew, or Christian, it becomes immaterial. Therefore, one should not, in quotes, say, I am changing my identity. Is that let your identity speak for itself. Let the goodness that you harbor speak for itself. And you will find that many a thing, through your goodness, you will find that many returns will not hurt you. It is when you have people who tie themselves to this or that that you have problems. The question many haven't asked themselves, who allocates the spaces in heaven? Is it the Imam? Is it the Muslim? Is it the Christian? Is it the Pope? Is it the Jewish leader? Who are all the religious leader? Who allocates space in heaven? By their activities, we will know where each one will have to go. So this lump behavior, which is exhibited by people who want to revenge, doesn't do any good. But let those who are being targeted also learn from it, that they themselves are not different from those who are attacking them. This is always the case. One feigns superiority over another people when one hasn't even given any evidence for that superiority. By their activities, let each personality exhibit that which they hold deep within. If it is of good, then it will reveal itself. If it is not, it will also reveal itself.
Thank you for that. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And the topic we're discussing tonight is Who Are We? And we'd love you to join us with any question or comments. The number to contact us here in UK tonight, I'm giving a different number than our usual number. So this is just for tonight. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. This UK number is 079 39 641 958. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. And as I mentioned already, the aim of the show is to introduce you to the Grail message. Now, if you want to get a copy for yourself, or want to get some more information, we can tell you this website you can go to, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'm going to spell that: www.grail, grail, message, message.com. Brother Gregory, if I ask
There
you,
is something I would like to read out
yes,
briefly, maybe for 5 minutes.
yes, I think, go ahead.
It is taken from an article from the message, real message, and the title is The Creature That Is Man. I'm not starting from the beginning, but there are a few paragraphs I want to read out. Those who have followed me so far know that man originates in the highest sphere of creation, in the spiritual sphere. But there are still many differences to be noted in the realm of the spiritual. Man on earth, who audaciously considers himself great, who often does not shrink from dragging his God down by regarding him merely as the highest on that step which he himself belongs, who sometimes even ventures to deny or revile him. Man in reality is not even that which many a humble soul imagine himself to be in all good faith. Man on earth is not a created being, but merely a developed being. That is the difference which man is unable to perceive and which he will never be able to survey freely. Beautiful and agreeable to many these are the words which numerous teachers utter in their efforts to increase the number of their adherents. Yet, these ignorant teachers are themselves convinced that all the errors they spread abroad are the truth.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. I've got a message from a listener, and that's concerning about um, the young Muslim lady we've been talking about, which is in the news, just Shamima Begum. The listener is saying that the jihadi bride Shamima's return should be granted based on true repentance and not on sentiments to her or her analogous son. So I'm just going to just share that with the listeners. I don't think we need to really comment anymore, since we've said quite a bit already on that. I'm going to change to a slightly different point now, Brother Greg. Not slightly, something different now. Now, we talked earlier, Brother Gregory, about reincarnation and the spirit being able to change its sex because it has the free will, and then, and we know on this earth, especially in the world today, many people are feeling that they're in the wrong body. Let's say they're born as a female, but then somehow they don't feel right that this is what they are, and they do, feel they're actually male, and then they go and do get a sex change operation or something like that, because they just don't feel right in that body. So, because that is part of their identity. They are what they believe they are male, and they're in a female body, and it just doesn't feel right for them. So what do you say about that, Brother Gregory?
Actually, one may not even bother to comment on some of these things. For nature made it very clear that on the one hand, we have the females, and nature provides the instrument of that being a female. And these things can be seen externally. And for the male, nature provides. So if man decides to reverse these things because of his or her thinking, again, that is the use of the free will. Human spirits are free to choose, to decide as they wish. But the consequences, they themselves will have to undergo. So there will be no need to say do this or don't do that. But what one may suggest, let each personality learn from nature. All right, because no sooner have they gone through some operation, then another thought comes into their head. Now they want to be male again, want to be female again. Then they go through another operation, and then life on Earth is a very short, even if it's 100 or 200 years. But as the soul wishes and makes its decision, whether it being on the finer side or on the coarse side, if it's the finer side, it incarnates as a female. If it's the coarse side, it incarnates as a male. But the initial decision that it made when it left paradise, that is what determined whether permanently it will be a male or a female. That is what nature has put in place, which they themselves must examine. In these discussions, it is intended that each one should not just take our word for it because it is discussed and it ends there. Each one must examine deep within their own intuitions and come to proper conclusion. Not just intellectual discussion and is thrown away. This sort of discussion, one may reflect on it throughout one's life and learn the necessary lessons such that mistakes or errors may be minimized. So, should one do operations or not? That is left to the free will of man.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. Now, let me just I know you've answered the question on this, about sex, the sex change operation and so on. And we know that these are really, how can I say, for that person who's going through that experience, where they are feeling that they're just not in the right body or whatever, it's like, I would say that each person, I know it's their life, and then they must really discover, what is right for them, what they need to go through that experience, why are they going through that experience. And you've said, Brother Gregory, about, there is a natural process. Nature takes a particular course, and when we do an operation, you are, let's say, working against nature in a way, artificially trying to change something, which, and then later, as you also mentioned, that maybe let's say a few years later they discovered, oh, actually, I don't want to be this now. I want to go back to what I was, and I want to change again. So I think the best advice for everybody, really, as you mentioned, Brother Gregory, is really, yes, we want to. You need to educate yourself, but educate in the sense of the spiritual aspect of life, not on the mere earthly living that we are very familiar with, because obviously that is not the true life. That is only on the surface, superficial, you could say, that's what we see physically. But the real thing is to have a spiritual life where all the questions that we've been asking and answering, you examine what is on the fundamental issue, what is going on in this, whatever the issue you're dealing with, it needs to be examined on that fundamental basis and not on the superficial basis. Otherwise, as Brother Gregory's mentioned, you just change from situation A to situation B to C, and then you're still not happy at the end of that because you have not complied with nature. So I think we've pretty much come to the end of our show now, listeners. I'm going to ask Brother Gregory, anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
I wish everybody well, and I wish them the strength for those who are able to acquire a copy of the work in the light of truth for further examination.
Thank you for that. Yes, listeners, hope you enjoyed the show tonight. The topic was Who Are We? And of course, we were going to be back next Tuesday. The topic hasn't been decided yet, but we will have one. So we'd love you to join us again. And I wish you all a great week. And as Brother Gregory's mentioned, if you do want to get a copy of the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. That's www.grail, message, message.com. I wish you all a great week, like I say, and please join us again next week with a new topic we'll have. This is Brother Saad. God bless everyone. Take care. Brother Saram should be all coming up soon. Please hang on there for him. All the best.